further ado, I want to announce you and give our next program. We have a fireside chat. And with the title, The Doctor Will See You Now, How Practo Conquered Medicine, India, and International Expansion. And let's call in Shashank ND, CEO and founder of Practo, and Harisimran Jolka, Associate Editor of Tech in Asia. Welcome the dynamic duo!
So guys, how many of you have been to a doctor? I'm sure everyone. How many of you want to start up something? Already started up? Okay, working for a startup? Okay. So not many enthusiastic hands, it seems that not many people want to start up, is it? Okay, they're very shy. Okay, that's okay. So the first time I actually heard about about Practo was, I was suffering from a really bad toothache, and I went to a doctor in Bangalore. And what happened was, he took 2 of my teeth out, and I was just cursing him all night. So in the morning, I got a really nice SMS from him. How are you feeling, Harsimran? So all the cursing stopped, and that Practo was responsible for that SMS, by the way. So the doctor was using Practo software to reach out to his patients. Thanks so much, Shashank, for doing this. Basically, the message of this talk is to actually inspire people to start up and what really needs, you'll really meet in the journey. So Shashank has built a company which is spread across 5 countries: India, Singapore, Malaysia, Indonesia, other places, and also they have raised $125 million. So people who want to build a global startup and a platform, I think he's the right guy to learn from. Yeah. So thanks, Shashank, for doing this.
Sure. Yeah.
So yeah, I heard that your dad was suffering from some ailment, and then you were looking for some doctors, and that's how this company got started. And you were studying at that time. You were a student, right?
That's right. I'm hoping I'm audible. Perfect. So that's right. It was 2008, about 8 years back, when I was in my final year of undergrad. I was a geek. I loved coding. I was studying computer science back then. And my father had this knee operation that he had to undergo. And I was trying to look for a second opinion. And that's when I had to reach out to a doctor in the US and take his opinion on my dad's knee.
What happened to his knee? Yeah.
So basically, he was, he was under pain, and we were trying to look for a treatment that would cure for it. And he had this bunch of files that I had to send across to the doctor in the US. And it was really difficult to do that because you had to take your phone, take photographs of it, attach it to your computer, download the file, send it to the doctor in the US. I found it really difficult to do that. So I go back to this doctor of mine who's in this very large hospital.
In Bangalore, right?
In Bangalore, and ask him for a digital copy. I say, hey, why can't you email this to me? It's more easier for me to distribute it. And his answer surprised me. He said, Shashank, I have a software, but the software only has a printout button. It doesn't have an email button. And I was like, wow, this is 2008, and you can't email this to me? He's like, many people have asked for it, but I just can't. And that baffled me, that the fact that a software had not kept the needs of a consumer in mind.
Which company was that?
So without taking names, generally it was
okay.
very difficult to get digital. It was very difficult for consumers to get access to their own health records in a digital format. And that opened up a thought in my mind of how can we ensure that consumers can have control on their own health data. So that was the main insight. And the second insight that I got was, why can't we make the software which doctors use more consumer-centric? And those are the 2 dots that we connected, and that laid the foundation for where Practo is today.
Okay, so then what happened? You guys started developing a software. You and your batchmate, right? And which year was that? You remember?
So 2008 is when this occurred to me, and I started talking to doctors a lot more and trying
to. You were in the final year.
We were in our final year.
Okay.
And my batchmate Abhinav was a batchmate of mine, and we had worked on a couple of projects earlier together. And we had a good chemistry, and we started building this product out. I coded for some, he coded for some, and we got the first version out. and it caught on fire. So just like the song before.
Okay, yeah, that was a Pitbull song. So we'll tell the story about the Pitbull song as well later in the talk. So and that was the year also when the recession happened, and then your parents started telling you, boss, take a placement. The startup business doesn't work, right?
Yes.
Or was there a lot of family opposition to it at that point of time?
Yeah, today people talk about slowing down, and they really should reflect back on what happened in 99, 2000, and what was going on in 2008, 2009. That was really tough days. What we have today is probably a little bit of a slowdown. But in 2008, when we started off, they were at least in the Southeast Asian market, venture capitalism was still just about to start. True venture capital hadn't really hit the shores. So investors are not many. And the second thing was the society as such did not understand about startups the way the ecosystem has developed today. Back then, it was very nascent. So for an entrepreneur, it was very difficult to venture out. You had no ecosystem to depend on. It was very difficult to get initial employees because people didn't want to join a small company. And also, there was no venture capital. So the differentiation between a small company and a startup wasn't really there. Today, there's a clear differentiation. So it was a recession time, and it was very hard for us to decide in 2009 to give up and to continue doing our startup. And so right out of college, we came out and we continued doing our startup without any funding.
Did you take a placement?
Of course not. I've never been in a company.
Okay, but you told me that you went for a placement and maybe just took an offer.
Yeah, I mean, there were a lot of companies that came to campus, and I think so I didn't attend campus placements for almost 3 to 4 months. So all my batchmates got placed, and I was the only person in my entire batch who was trying to do a startup in 2008. Right. And finally, I gave in after 4 months, and I took and I just went back to campus. I was working out of Bangalore, so I went back to campus, and the first company that came that day sat for it, got the job, and came back. Came back
and did your own startup. Yeah. Okay. And I believe you went around on your scooter doing all the sales while Abhinav, your co-founder, actually did all the coding, right?
I think it's very important to understand that there are, I think, two very important things to do when you're starting off. Sure. And many other things are distractions. The two very important things when starting off, and for us, which was very core, was code and sell. That was the only thing that mattered. And everything else was distraction. So we would only keep a scorecard. I remember we had a whiteboard in office, and we would keep a scorecard of just 2 numbers. One, number of sales you did that day, which was the number of customers you acquired. And 2 was the number of lines of code you wrote. Of course, number of lines of code really doesn't really matter, but in the scheme of things, it's very important to see what really, the only thing you have is time, and you have to make sure that your time is split between these 2 very critical activities. Everything else was, for us, waste of time, like networking, attending, too many conferences were all things that we try to stay away from.
Okay. So don't attend too many conferences if you're really building a startup.
Apart from Tech in Asia, I think you should.
Okay. Apart from Tech in Asia,
you should choose to avoid many.
Okay.
Only high quality ones like these.
Okay. Only high quality ones like Tech in Asia. Yeah. Thank you so much. And by the way, we have a July conference coming up in Bangalore, which will be similar size. So if you don't want to waste time, please come over and visit Bangalore. Yeah.
I'm there too.
Yeah. Obviously. And failure is a bad word, and it was a bad word in India at that point of time, and also in a lot of Asian markets, East Asian markets, a lot of startups, entrepreneurs tell us that, it is not very encouraged. So how do you take failure? And it was, I think you had less than $200 in your account, and everything was running out. I mean, less food to eat, right? Or no?
I think startups are very hard. Startups are insanely hard. Everything that can go wrong will go wrong. Starting from people starting from initial employees will leave you. You'll probably run out of money. Important customers will leave you. You'll probably, undergo a lot of trauma. That's what startups are all about. It's those who can, cross that chasm that actually make it. So there were definitely a lot of moments where we faced very difficult questions, where critical customers left us, very key employees decided to move on. So it was, you're always living in this paranoia. And it's extremely critical that you use this to motivate yourself and to say that, and to try and ensure that all these lows actually push you higher. And that's what we did. All the lows, we would ask ourselves, is this the lowest point? Right? Is this the lowest point? And is this the lowest point? And if this is the lowest point, I can handle it, right? And so actually, to be very honest, the pushbacks actually motivate you even more to try and achieve success.
Right. And I think it changes you as a person, right? You are a changed person completely from...
totally. I think it's the quality.
You become more resilient to a lot of challenges in life. Yeah.
Definitely improves your, as in being part of a startup, definitely personality changes. You become, you realize what true value is.
Right. And I believe your customers also told us, boss, just quit this whole startup thing and move to the US. The doctors that you went. Is that true?
So there was this very interesting incident which happened. And this is again when a lot of people say no to you, what you should do, which is very critical. I think a lot of us frame our opinion and frame our thoughts based on what others think and what others say. So imagine this, we start off bootstrapped, no capital whatsoever, right out of college, no experience whatsoever, in a healthcare market which has, in 2008, had no companies whatsoever, no traction. And we had no experience in healthcare either. And the first few customers we sold our product to loved the product. The usage metrics were insane. It was a web product, they loved it. But after a few weeks, this customer of mine calls me to his center. And
a doctor. What doctor was that? A cardiologist or?
So there's a doctor who calls us to his center and tells us that we develop a particular bond. And he calls me to the center and tells me that he's seen many software companies trying to sell to doctors who have gone out of business. So he tells me that, hey, this is not a very viable business model, so don't do it. Right? And that left a big impact on me. The fact that a doctor who actually paid us for the product actually calls me to the side and says that don't do this. But he did not see what we saw. We saw a particular platform that can be built. We saw a new innovative model, which we call the Hyperloop, could be formed, and a huge impact that it would bring to the world, which the world had never seen before.
What's this Hyperloop you're talking about?
So luckily, we didn't give up, and we told the doctor that just renew your product. We'll take care of everything.
I'm not going to the US.
Yeah, I think India. I think the Southeast Asian market is very exciting. So we stuck around. The Hyperloop is a very interesting concept which we developed back in 2008, and it's probably the core at the center of how we innovated. What we wanted to do was we wanted to give the control of medical records in the hands of the consumers. And back in the day, the only way you could manage your own health records was if you uploaded them yourself into something like a Google Health or a Microsoft Vault. And we felt that was a very difficult proposition to do, primarily because no consumers go to a hospital and then come back and upload all his records. So the way we designed the product was, what if we gave a software to the doctors, just like the one that my father's doctor was using, and get him to upload the records, and then make him share the records of the patient. And that's what we do with Practo, is we have 35 million health records on our database, manage close to 40 million appointments annually on our platform. And through this, we are able to access health records and share them with the consumers, all in a consent architecture manner, and give the control to the consumers and help consumers manage their own health. And that's the Hyperloop. Just the last element of the Hyperloop is you build a lot of workflow products for the enterprises, and you build marketplaces, and you connect the two together. And that has a huge exponential effect on each other. So a marketplace with a SaaS platform is what in healthcare is what we call the Hyperloop. Recently there were a couple of articles, if people want to look it up, called market networks. And this is a new form of verticalization that's taking place right now, where people are marrying two business models together and getting ripple effects of the two.
So the learning is that people with domain experience might not be able to give you the right perspective, what you're trying to build. So the doctor must have had many years of experience behind him, and you were with almost 0 years experience. You were a student, right?
Yeah, I was a student, but what I realized was, the best things to build are some things that you want for yourself. And I remember walking into my parents' chamber one day, and they had this thick file of healthcare records. And I was really surprised. My father had managed to keep every single copy of my birth certificate and up till when I was really young, all together.
Both his parents used to work for a government department, right?
So when they had this particular file, what dawned on me was that it's going to be impossible for me to do this when I grow old. I can't keep a diary, for God's sake. Forget a file with health records of mine and my family's. So that's when I decided that, can we build something that can manage this health records in a way in which tomorrow, when you fall sick, you can just go to a hospital and based on your previous data, they can give you a much better personalized healthcare and a better outcome for you. And hopefully even prevent people from falling sick altogether. And that was the power in which we built this particular model. So I guess what's important more than experience is your conviction in your idea, your conviction in your vision, and hopefully something that can solve for yourself. And if you're convinced about it, if you believe in it yourself, 9 out of 10 people will say no, but you'll start converting.
Okay. So don't, just ignore what a lot of people say. Believe what you, that's what the message is.
Logically. Yeah. Logically explain it and find a logical way to, believe in your idea.
Right. But a lot of people don't want to go to doctors, and I think everyone is young here, and maybe once in a year they might go to doctors. So what's next for Practo? So tell us.
We definitely
how do you?
Yeah, I think the world should be one which is healthy, and our vision is to keep people healthy and keep people live longer. So we hope to see people fall less sick and live a healthy life. What's for us? Our objective is to find a way in which we can prevent illness in the world. We have a lot of data today, and we believe that this data can be used to help people live a more healthier lifestyle, help people fall less ill, and help prevent many of the illnesses that are coming up. So our efforts going forward are going to be more towards machine learning and AI, which is going to build on top of the data that we have of consumers and give insightful information to both doctors so that they can treat better, and consumers so that they can live better. And so we believe that we can significantly help people in that manner.
What's this AI you're talking about? Can you explain a little
Absolutely.
bit how will it work?
I think this is, of course, this is a well-knowledgeable crowd. Everyone knows about the fact that, the data that you have can be used, through machine learning and predictive models to be able to predict things based on the past. And new data is coming onto the internet. So for example, health data so far was primarily in files. If you think about it, health data has always been in hospitals, locked up in diagnostic centers. It has never been digital in nature. We have been able to aggregate large sum of health data together. Now through this health data and through machine learning, you can derive predictive analytics and predictive models, which is what called precision systems, where this health data can predict outcomes. So if I have, let's say, 100 million patients' health records, and I can figure out through machine learning and through AI the probability of someone to develop hypertension, or the probability of someone who's on the verge of diabetes, to predict what a medicine's capability is, what is the potential of a particular drug, what's the potential of a particular treatment. If different treatments, and if I'm able to monitor what their outcomes have been, I can decide and help the doctor decide which treatment to prefer versus the other. So our ability to influence the consumer and this thing goes up dramatically with the data that we have and using these new models that are coming to light.
And I believe you're adding gym, spas, salons as well on your platform. Do you take a haircut on Practo?
I think everyone should. The idea is that we believe
I went to trim my beard on the weekend, but there's a huge queue. I think I should have used Practo, right, to book an appointment.
I guess we have a good collection of both cure-oriented doctors on the platform. We also look at prevention. The only way for one to prevent going to a doctor is by staying fit.
Okay. Who all uses Practo in your family?
I think a lot of people in my family. Luckily, my father has used Practo quite a few times.
Okay.
Unfortunately, my mother is a critical user of Practo. I keep getting feedback from her, which is sometimes a little annoying.
What does she tell?
She has improvements that she prefers in the product. So dinner is no longer a simple affair these days. So you get user feedback even during dinner, which is.
What is the most critical feedback you got? Or funny feedback?
Funny feedback. So she's very particular about grammar, and so which is not my strong point. So dinner, it's about what's the better email tagline to have, what could have got her attention better, what could have been better put out. So I pass it on to my team.
Okay. Yeah, and your girlfriend also uses Practo.
Yeah, I think a lot of my family members use Practo. Yes.
Okay. Yeah. So that's really interesting. You know, on a funny side, a lot of people, a lot of entrepreneurs say that you can keep only one, either a startup or a girlfriend. Is that true? And how difficult has it been? Any tips?
I think one thing I learned in life very early on is that it's always better to be an and than an or.
Okay.
So you always want to prefer, you always optimize for ands.
Okay.
So you want to have both.
How difficult has it been?
I think if you manage your time
how do you
well,
manage time? Yeah.
if you manage your time well and then you keep reflecting and keep improving, you can manage a lot more. I think the people who are really gutsy, I feel, are women entrepreneurs who are able to not just manage the relationships and their startups, but also have kids and who have, I think, a much strenuous workload than you or me. So kudos to them.
Yeah, I think you must have spent more time with Abhinav, your co-founder, than.
Initial days, definitely. I think a lot of time is spent in the initial days spending about 14, 16, 18 hours in the office, and sometimes weeks together. At least I remember 4 or 5 days in the office itself without going back.
Yeah. Did she complain?
You're able to figure the ways out.
Okay. How important is co-founder in a journey of a startup? What do you want to tell people? And how do you resolve differences? I'm sure a lot of differences keep on cropping up whenever you start up something in vision where you want to take the product and also in the business vision. So how do you resolve that, and how important is a co-founder?
I think co-founders are very critical. I think co-founders and early employees, I'll club them together.
You might have given up if Abhinav wasn't there?
I think giving up is never in the question.
Okay.
I think you have to first make up your mind that you're never going to give up, no matter what.
Okay. So don't give up, even if it gets tough.
Yeah, I think you need to basically that's the starting point. Don't give up, right? And then you move on from there. Okay. The point is, I think you need to really treat your early employees and your co-founders really well. I think there's a lot of EQ that's required from founders to manage that relationship. It's critical. Early employees are no lesser than co-founders who really help shape the company up. So it's critical when they believe in you to make sure that you give back in kind. The second thing that you asked is how do you resolve differences? Yes. Is we have this concept in Practo called VUPIM. VUPIM, which is VUPIM, which stands for Vision, Users, Practions, which is what we call our employees, investors, and me. So we always optimize on that order. So if there's any resolving, we always optimize for the vision. So the arguments are never about what's good for you or me. It's always what's good for the vision. And usually that's very logically, you can explain that what is good for the vision. And as long as everyone is aligned to doing something what is right for the vision, things pan out. The other very critical thing that I keep re-emphasizing on is that people need to be loyal to the vision and not loyal to people. Okay. The one way to avoid politics in the company and one way to avoid politics in general or groupism in startups and avoid people-to-people issue is to put the vision out there and make the vision the most important thing in the company. And so when you are aligning everyone in the company to the vision, you're able to.
Politics.
There'll be no differences, and people will be able to fall in place.
Sure. At this point of time, any questions? People can raise their hand, and we'll get the mic to you. Yeah, there's one question there. You want the mic? I can give you my mic. Mic is coming. Yeah, that's.
Yeah, one question. You say that actually in Practo you have more than 200,000 doctors that subscribes. How do you get that number? How long do you need to convince those doctors, 200,000, which is a very sizable numbers? Thank you. So
200,000 doctors are on our platform today. It's been an 8-year journey. So I think and most of them use different products of ours. Some of them use 5 products of ours. Some of them use 3, or some of them 2, and some of them 1.
How many products do you have right now?
For doctors, I think close to about, between clinics, hospitals, diagnostic centers, roughly maybe about 8 products.
Sure.
But coming to a specific question of how do you convince doctors? It's very critical for us to be able to convince the doctor that if you are able to use our products, you can actually improve your revenues. That's a very clear line of sight that we provide the doctors with. So you have to really show value to the doctors. I'll give a very quick example. I think the audience would be, also will realize that the first 1,000 doctors are probably the hardest ones. And then it becomes easier to have a repeatable model post that. People keep saying this, and people in the audience, I used to listen to them and say, that's not true. It must be difficult. But honestly, it's an exponential curve. So the cracking the first 1,000 is the most difficult. The job that you're doing today, if you're cracking the first 1,000, is probably the most difficult job that you'll do in the entire startup phase. Okay? So, so comfort yourself with the thought that if you're in the first 0 to 1,000, you're probably doing the toughest job. So what you do in the first 0 to 1,000 is you make something repeatable. I'll explain this. Probably the most important concept that we were able to crack with doctors was instant gratification. Instant gratification. The attention of a user, especially in a B2C and in a B2B space, we were selling to SMBs earlier, was instant gratification. How can I make sure that in 30 seconds, he's interested in my product? Because in 30 seconds, he's going to get distracted. So that is one very critical thing. My most important thing, I'll not spend my time talking about history. I'll make a product demo in which in 30 seconds, I'm going to blow his mind. In 30 seconds. So that's one. And the second thing is, how do I show him that over time, this can actually give him value back? So if he uses the product, he will make value from it. So usage and instant gratification, these are the two critical things that we spent most of our time when we were acquiring the first 1,000 customers, first 1,000 doctors. And then after that, it's scalable.
Sure. More questions?
Okay, no, thank you.
Yeah. Yeah, one can raise his hand. Anyone? You have a question, right? Okay. The mic, please, here, in the front row.
Okay.
You can take my mic if you.
Sorry.
That's okay. That's okay.
Sorry. Thank you so much. I have two questions. So the first one is, since Tencent has invested in Practo, so do you have any thoughts of marching into the Chinese market, maybe this year or in the future? The second question is, I know that you have very strong presence in Southeast Asia, and also you are marching into Brazil market. And so what are the obstacles and challenges that you've encountered in the process of the global expansion? Thank you.
Yeah, the Chinese market. And is it difficult to crack the Chinese market? A lot of entrepreneurs actually claim that.
So definitely the coming of Tencent is very useful to us. We have started spending a lot of time in the Chinese market, just more from a vantage point of how technology can actually develop. The Chinese market is very unique because it's the only place in the world where you have an internet ecosystem minus Facebook and Google. So you can really see how an internet ecosystem can develop when such major players are not there. So it develops in a very different manner. So you'll see that the Chinese market develops in a very different manner. So we get a vantage point of learning. I think that's what Tencent brings to the table. So we learn a lot. Our products get a lot more stronger. The healthcare market in China is very different from the rest of the world. Almost 80% plus of the market is still public in China. The private healthcare market is very small, unlike Singapore, Brazil, Indonesia, Philippines. I mean, largely the rest of the world. But that's changing very fast. I guess it's only our model and our products will probably be most effective in markets where private healthcare is practiced in more majority. So we'll probably have to wait and watch when that happens and when that tilts over, and we'll probably look at the market more closely then. In terms of what are the challenges we face when scaling up into multiple geographies, I think it's for us it was very clear from day one that we were building a global product. So we, even in our bootstrap days in 2009 when we were building the first version of the product, we still had that in mind. We didn't act on it, but we had that in mind. We only acted on expanding globally after we raised our Series A. We raised our Series A in 2012, so 4 years after we started. And we raised 4 million.
And I think you partied to the Pitbull song, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. That was a bonfire, New Year's Eve, right? You want to tell something?
Yeah, I'll complete this and add on.
Okay.
So after 4 years, when you did see, so a lot of entrepreneurs make a mistake of going international too fast. So it's very critical to know at what juncture do you want to go international. So we made sure that we had enough runway of at least 24 months and pulled out some small capital and invested in a new geography. So only when you have 24 months did we even spend any iota of energy in a new market. And after starting the new market, we spent another 24 months learning from that market. And it's only after 6 years of running the business that we started off. So I think more than number of years, what's very critical is that you have enough runway to invest in a new geography. And you take in the first country usually takes most amount of time. So you learn enough from the first country before you expand more. So our first country in Singapore, we came to Singapore in 2013, January. And it took us almost 2 more years before we launched Philippines in 2015, January, and then Indonesia. And the learnings have been that there are a lot of products that don't scale. We had a very successful product in India that did not scale to global markets. It was a multi-million-dollar product of ours. We cut it. We cut it ruthlessly because we didn't want to spend any energies in building a localized product. We always wanted to build a global product. So we ensured that our product was globalized from literally day one, and anything that was not, we cut it. So you have to be ruthless about that.
So the learning is to crack the template and then expand in other markets, right?
Yeah.
Any more questions? Please raise the hands. Time is running out. Yeah, one question there. The lady, yeah, please, thanks.
Hi, I'm Sherilyn from Asia Law Network. I would like to know if your vision is as clear as it is from day one, and if not, how has it changed, and why and how?
Yeah. The changing of the vision.
Absolutely, I think it's a great question. So our insight was the same from day one. Our insight was same from day one. We had the insight of how to get health records in the hands of the consumer from day one. The way we do it has definitely changed. So luckily for us, we have stayed, on the same course from the day one. I'm sure it may not be the same thing for different companies, but for us, we've been able to stick to our vision. What has changed for us is how do we get there? So we never anticipated that we would build 8 different products for doctors, for example. We knew we had to get there. We never changed the end goal, but we changed the path we took from the learnings we had. So you never allow your ego to come in the way of your, if a product is not working, you cut it. If your feature is not working, you cut it. So you cannot have it's a very humbling experience as an entrepreneur because you're sometimes proved wrong. And when you're proved wrong, you quickly accept it and you keep changing your course. But it's very critical to get why you're doing what you're doing. It's very critical to get that right. And so for us, it was always about building a great product, building and having great impact in healthcare and putting this health records in the hands of consumers. That why was as clear as a daylight from day one. How we did it kept changing.
Sure. So don't love the idea, but love the problem, right?
Yeah.
More questions? Last 2 questions, if anyone has. Yeah. So thank you so much, Shashank. It's been a great having you. The learnings have been that just have a 30-second pitch really made up in your mind before you meet a customer or investor. When you have vision, the politics don't crop up in the companies, and don't ever give up. Yeah. Thank you so much. Thanks, Shashank.